Hey everyone, this is Ross, founder of Siege Media, and today I want to talk to you about why your blog is most likely set up incorrect for SEO and also just general use. So, a recent article that was pretty popular by Jimmy Daly of the Animals team was the idea of your blog is not a publication. And this was a great post that kind of highlighted the fact that really users these days do not go to blogs for business blogs anyways to just view the newest post. People don't interact that way. Instead, they want to solve problems. And rarely does that happen through a very traditional newest to oldest blog structure as we imagine it. Instead, we should think of our blogs, or rather our content sections, as a library, more of a organization of useful information that solves problems. And this was a great insight from Jimmy that also leads into other details that I think are also very wrong about how many people approach their blogs today. So one thing I actually saw recently in doing some research for a presentation is a thing that's been changing is a lot of brands put out these like crazy, amazing blogs, super high custom, they're very fancy. And the feeling I've gotten is that in general, they've kind of receded in value. If actually they never had value, people just thought because they had to do content marketing that these were things they had to do. So an example of this in action is I did a search for best brand blogs. It's just confirmation of this thesis. And I found this article on the Content Strategist of 5 fashion brand blogs that are killing the game. And this was published in 2015. And I looked at this article and I went through and I looked at those 5 blogs, and 4 of the 5 are now dead. And one that is not dead is more of like a product press release type setup now. And I think that is kind of an indicator of exactly this reality that people, these old school, not old school, but the kind of early 2000s, mid 2000s mindset of we need a fancy blog to be publishing without really understanding how to do it to generate ROI came to fruition that they weren't realizing ROI from that effort. And eventually those efforts were paused. But that doesn't mean that content creation or content marketing isn't high value. It actually is high value. We just have to do it the right way. So one thing I think is in particular that so many of these blogs do wrong is that they do not basically push to a shopping experience. So if we look at an example like Hallmark, one thing that they do differently from a content organization section is that Hallmark actually has their shopping links in their navigation. So you can experience a blog post that relates to the shopping experience in some way. And from that exact same spot, you can go to their nav very easily. It feels exactly the same as the main site experience. Also, from an SEO perspective, if you get links into this content marketing section, there's no indirect funneling of that value. It is directly right there. Compare that to a site like Equinox. We look at this site in the nav, no shopping links whatsoever. They're pushing the fluff name of their new blog experience and content experience. And if you actually try and click on their logo, you can't even get back to the main site. It redirects back to the blog. And if you really want to find their actual blog, their site link, you have to go all the way into the footer and click home in order to get that. And yes, it links to other content sections and some other links and things like that. But if you think about just the link equity distribution of simply one link back to the homepage as compared to 100, and also just the shopping experience of not pushing back to that main site in the nav, you're not really going to be creating a high ROI experience. It doesn't have to be super commercially minded just because there's a header and a footer. You can still be non-aggressive in the body and users will not bounce. They won't think you're selling something that aggressively. This is the perfect balance. And I think so many blogs actually took the Equinox experience of trying to create fluff, fancy publication that looks like a magazine, in reality going so far away from a SEO-minded, actual bottom line minded revenue experience that actually took away from their bottom line because of that, and they eventually killed their work because of that. So my real suggestion, like an example like Laddus and their library section, which Jimmy Daly mentions on his blog is not his publication post, You see in their footer, they're linking to all various important pages. Their nav is the exact same experience on their content section. And this is how a blog should, or really a content section should be experienced to get maximum ROI from those efforts for someone who lands on those from most likely search or through your efforts. In addition, the way they organize their content is they think of things as an organization of information rather than a newest to oldest experience. So for your business, you'd want to consider, how do people experience problems and want to solve them? They consider it a library. It might not be called library, it could be learn, it could be what have you for them, but they drill down by the actual problems they have as an HR solution. And if you're an HR person, you have a specific problem that you're thinking about signing up for software that can solve that solution, you would go to that specific problem. So an example is they have performance reviews. Maybe you're realizing you now have 100 people at your organization. Simply the act of doing performance reviews is really laborious for you. So you would specifically want to drill down into that problem area and reveal the insights of that information. And it would be segmented by that. Compare that to the traditional Equinox blog that's probably all over the place in terms of structure and focus, and is not really addressing the problems that people have. That's going to result in users bouncing, not basically having higher time on site. It's also not going to be organizing that data from a powerful SEO perspective, which is all going to result in less effective content strategy for you. And you can see when you drill into these specific sections for the Laddus blog, they also organize by specifically those topics. So if someone really wants to give employee feedback in this situation or solve problems around that, they can read multiple articles on it and build credibility and trust in that Laddus brand, which is probably more likely to actually drive sales for them. And it's probably not coincidence that that top left article is how Laddus can specifically solve those problems and help build culture at your organization. And you can see how that can be valuable for them in organizing content. And even more powerfully, this structure and this idea, as denoted from the animals team, it more likely is going to get the most important pages higher in your hierarchy and also organized appropriately as compared to that newest to oldest structure. In their example, you also silo out those specific themes also of employee feedback, employee in performance reviews, etc. Those things basically give you the insights and the value that is more accurately broken out in this kind of structure that can be valuable to you. And if you're not animals and you don't, or not animals, rather, not Laddus, don't have the structure and the time to do this in like 5 seconds, a quick hack to make this change would be to just put like a featured post or featured content section at the top of your blog. So we realized when we were doing this incorrectly that we could at least take a shorter term solution and put a featured post section with our basically go-to asset that most of our customers would want to look at, which is our how to increase website traffic posts. So you couldn't really find this on our site without deeply looking until we really surfaced this and made sure on the blog everyone can see this every time they come in. So for you, it might be a different set of important pages, but this could be a quicker hack to get something live while you potentially work on the overarching library concept, should you agree that that is right for your business. That isn't to say the newest to oldest is completely something to abandon. For Laddus, what they do is they have their organization up top, and at the bottom, they put that most recent section that adds value. And for the kind of person who maybe wants the news about HR in some way, or obviously an SEO wants the most recent thing, that makes sense to solve that in that kind of fashion. So it's still below the fold, and it's just one solution that you could use in order to do that. For the SEO audience that we have, the HRS community, they do things in a different way where they just have 3 posts at the top that are the most recent to oldest, which is a nice way of highlighting the newest, freshest stuff for them. But when you actually go deeper on their blog index, they have a lot of real estate dedicated to those most important pages that they surely want to drive people to for 2 reasons. One, for link equity flow from their homepage from that section. And second, because these, I'm guessing a lot of these actually drive conversions and sales for them. So that blog index setup for them in a very tech heavy, a lot of change kind of thing is vital and helps them achieve both goals and solve for that. But that doesn't mean you necessarily want to completely abandon newest to oldest or getting people new content. I think social media is a good way of getting people that kind of information. You can go to Twitter, where it's the more natural newest to oldest and will always be, or Facebook or whatever social network of choice makes sense for you. And of course, email as well, I think, has that incentive or knowledge that you're going to get the newest to the oldest content when you distribute through that channel. So Ahrefs asks you if you would like to get notified of those new articles, and you could have a similar call to action on your content and your site in order to drive them to that information and actually get them to sign up and get that fresh content while still achieving the goals of that ideal blog. So to summarize, I think a lot of people are doing blog content wrong for a few reasons from an SEO and a user experience perspective, and that's why they abandon it. It's because the header does not push to shopping experiences. The footer does not push to shopping experiences. The blog is newest to oldest rather than being an organization of the problems people really have. And they're not siloed appropriately and organized appropriately to get the most important pages higher in the hierarchy in order to get them the more SEO value that they need. So hopefully this was of use to you. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments. Thanks for watching.